Still in bed, you hear a low hum behind the wall. It's not loud enough to turn into an event. It's not close enough to identify. Yet it doesn't stop. And the sleeping brain isn't designed to ignore an unfinished signal in the dark. The bedroom feels like a border post with no clear horizon. A pipe knock, distant tires, a footstep on the ceiling. Each arrives as an unsigned message, prompting the body to check distance, movement, and intent. Hold that ordinary sound for 1 second longer. The usual explanation is sensitivity, stress, or poor sleep. But the colder truth is unconscious auditory monitoring. Think of it like keeping one guard awake, because no one has confirmed what made the sound. Noise doesn't have to wake you consciously. It only has to keep sleep and attention partly staffed, while the room feels calm and the body silently takes attendance. The obvious theory is simple. If the sound isn't loud, it can't matter. That theory is too neat. The nervous system isn't measuring just volume, it tracks eventfulness, uncertainty, and ambiguity of source. Noise isn't a hammer. It's a question mark that keeps reopening. So the question changes. A steady sound can fade into the background floor of the room. But a sudden noise, or one that shifts shape, demands a refrigerator's drone may disappear into the floor. But an irregular knock from above makes the brain pause to weigh intention. That's the first reversal. The city doesn't need to shout. It just has to leave a signal incomplete. And the most dangerous sound may be one that never explains itself. The UCEC Europe doesn't treat environmental noise as a mere preference. It frames it as a public health issue, because the sleeping body isn't sealed off from the world once the eyes close. Sleep isn't a switched-off machine. It's a guarded building running on low power. The lights are dimmed, the doors locked, but the night staff still patrols the corridors, listening for signals out of place. The 2009 WHO night noise guidelines underscore this point. Night noise can cause movement, awakenings, shifts in sleep stages, cardiovascular responses, and hormonal changes. The sleeper may not recall waking, but the body still receives a tiny internal memo saying, "Check again." Now pause here. Memory is not the same as impact. This is where the usual explanation falls short. If you remember nothing, you assume nothing happened. But biology doesn't wait for a clean story before reacting. A sound can lightly touch the sleeping system, disrupt its internal order, and leave no scene for consciousness to replay in the morning. That is why background noise is so hard to judge from inside the bed. It might never trigger a full crisis. It might never cause a clear awakening. Instead, it can keep reopening the question of whether the building is safe, and you lose rest without ever having a clear memory of the disturbance. The next layer is less subjective. In 2008, the Hyena study tracked airport communities across Europe where nighttime aircraft noise entered bedrooms while people were asleep. The key detail isn't just that aircraft were heard. Sleeping bodies showed immediate blood pressure increases after those night events. To put this in context, this isn't simply someone complaining the next morning. It's the cardiovascular system responding to sound before consciousness even tells a story. The person may have no memory of the aircraft, no thought saying, "I woke up," no clear event to blame. But the blood vessels have already tightened, and the pulse has already processed the information. The city presses lightly against the sleeping pulse, not with a command, and not always with a crash. Sometimes it's a distant engine, crossing the dark sky, a pressure wave arriving from a source the brain can't inspect, ending before the sleeper can turn it into thought. That is the part worth sitting with. If the sound were fully understood, harmless and closed, the monitoring system could relax. But a night aircraft event is more than just loudness. It's movement, distance, approach, departure, uncertainty. But the old nervous system doesn't ask whether the apartment lease is modern or if the walls are legal. If the sleeper feels annoyed. It asks whether something out there has changed. And in the Hyena findings, the answer is written in vascular motion, not opinion. The sleeper does not need to agree that the sound mattered. The artery has already made its decision. That mechanism doesn't vanish when the eyes open. It changes costumes. During sleep, the body responded to aircraft noise through the vascular system. When awake, the brain handles sound through memory, attention, and sorting out meaning. The Amprick Toll study linked aircraft noise exposure with poorer reading comprehension and recognition memory. This isn't just a child being careless with a page. It's a learning system trying to hold sentences in place while another stream of acoustic information keeps entering the room uninvited. Attention becomes a desk covered in unopened envelopes, each stamped urgent by sound. A passing aircraft isn't just air moving. It's an event with a source, direction, rise, fall, and uncertain ending. The child doesn't need to fear it, but the auditory system still registers that something has crossed the task's boundary. And here, the problem takes on a colder edge. Research on irrelevant speech reveals a similar challenge in everyday adult life. Background voices can be processed automatically, even when we're trying to ignore them. Imagine the difference between silence and a half-heard conversation near your desk. You might not want to hear the words, but your brain still picks up fragments, syllables, possible names, or intentions. This means the problem isn't just a moral weakness or a modern, short attention span. It's about acoustic labor. The brain's working memory is forced to handle signals it didn't choose, yet it's expected to perform as if the desk were quiet. The existential issue is tied directly to the physical one. When exposure is chronic, unfinished signals keep coming back. Memory load means your private workspace of thought is repeatedly taken over. Acoustic processing means your mind isn't sealed off from the room around you. There's no comfort. Yet, the system is still listening. The modern mind might not just be failing to focus. It might be surrounded by unfinished messages. In the end, the evidence points away from one dramatic source. The population-level noise burden from the environment makes this exposure public, not private. This isn't about a single bad night, one engine, or a thin wall. It's the constant acoustic floor beneath sleep, reading, work, and recovery. The WHO night noise targets highlight the same truth. Sleep requires more than darkness over the eyes. It needs moments when sound stops arriving as unfinished information. For context, ancestral nights weren't perfectly silent. They featured long stretches where sounds had clear distance, identifiable sources, and definite endings. So the conclusion isn't more complicated. It's simpler. Quiet is the missing darkness for the ear. The city erases that darkness by keeping signals open. A hum starts behind the wall. A vehicle approaches and passes before the brain can close the file. A pipe knocks once, then waits. Nothing has entered the room. Nothing has become an emergency, but the monitoring system remains partly on duty. This is the mismatch. Quiet isn't a luxury. It's a biological interval that allows vigilance to relax. The city doesn't have to threaten you. It just has to keep asking if something's there.